there suffering from PTSD like Andy is. Now the fun part, I want to talk about politicians just briefly. The politicians learned, everybody says, why didn't we learn anything from Vietnam? Well, the politicians learned a very important lesson from Vietnam. The lesson is, isolate and hide the impact of the war. Hide it from the people that you are supposedly answerable to. Limit the impact to people who have less power in society. And most of all, don't even pretend to threaten the sons and the daughters of the well-off with service. That's what they learned in Vietnam. So instead of using the real draft that they used in Vietnam, they now use the economic draft. They drafted the National Guard that belongs home, taking care of us here. They drafted them into a war based on lies. And they also used the stop-loss draft, which is the, whoops, my fingers were crossed when you signed that agreement. Actually, we know you're supposed to get out next week, but we're going to keep you for another year and a half draft. Isn't it ironic that the president who used the National Guard used his family's power to get in the National Guard and then used the National Guard to avoid service in Vietnam is also the president who has sent so many of our National Guard off to the war, off to fight a war based on lies, and who is not taking care of them when they get back. These chicken hawk bastards who never served Can I say that at an AFT convention? Oh, okay, okay. These chicken hawks never served, whose children are not serving, find it so easy to send our loved ones off to die. A friend of mine once asked me, I was at a union training, he asked me, Charlie, do you know what a just war is? I'm a labor educator by trade, and as a labor educator or a teacher, I started to give a long philosophical answer, and he said, no, Charlie. This was a guy out of a chemical plant. Straightforward. It's much simpler than that. A just war is a war that you'd send your own kids off to fight. And after hearing that, I was looking around the internet, and I found a wonderful quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt said, I think my husband, referring to the President of the United States, I think my husband would be very much upset if the boys, referring to her own sons, hadn't immediately joined the military. But he didn't have to worry because they already had. Do you think George Bush is very much upset that his daughters haven't run out? Do you think our Governor Romney, who has 5 sons of military age, is very much upset that they haven't run off to fight in this war that he says is a good thing that we should be there fighting? But just so you don't think I'm really down on the Republicans, I want to talk about the Democrats for just a second. Because these chicken hawk bastards, they know this war is wrong. They know this war is wrong. They even know this war needs to end. But instead of getting out there and doing what needs to be done to end it, they are scurrying around trying to avoid the label quitter. They're trying to avoid that label while our sons and daughters, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers are getting new labels like KIA, killed in action, WIA, wounded in action, PTSD, and suicide. And it gets even worse because the Democrats actually have an election year strategy. And the election year strategy is to criticize the war and keep it going. Because that's how they think they're going to win in November, and they're willing to do it on the deaths, not only of American troops, but of Iraqi citizens. So now I want to talk about exit strategy. We have an exit strategy. It's called planes, ships, and trucks. The discussion of exit strategy, we need an exit strategy, is the biggest misdirection and disingenuity, I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it, on the part of Congress that we've seen in a long time. Politicians don't develop exit strategies. Politicians make the decision that we need to leave, and then they say, as Jean-Luc Godard said, make it so. And then the generals go about and make it happen. This is what we are asking them to do, not to discuss how we get out, but to tell the generals to get us out. Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts is the one congressperson who has really stepped forward and put out a bill that says no more funding for the war in Iraq, save the money necessary to get the troops out safely. That's the position. Bring them home now. Bring them home now, because the U.S. is the problem and not the solution. Not now, never will be. Because we are only fuel on the fire that's raging right now in Iraq, because every day we stay, more Americans and Iraqis die, because those who decided to take us into war, this is actually, to me, the most important one. Every day we stay, those who decided to take us into war based on lies are still making the decisions, are still in control. George Bush and his cronies are still in power and prosecuting this war for their own ends. Do you think if we give them 6 more months, things are going to get better? We need to get out because we are both a target and an instigator, because the politics of Iraq can never, ever resolve with the 800-pound U.S. gorilla in the room. And if you don't believe me, my only reason for being up here is because my son did something that I really begged him not to do, which was to join the Marines. If you don't believe me, go read a guy named General Odom. General Odom used to be the head of the National Security Administration. He's got a lot of credibility on these issues. He's got a wonderful article called Cut and Run, You Bet. And it is written as talking points in a fact sheet. It is wonderful. And every argument you've ever heard about why we can't leave, he takes apart, including the argument about we have to train the Iraqis. Well, the vast majority, especially of Iraqi men, were in the army at some point. We don't need to train them. They need political leadership that's going to allow them to recreate their country, and they can't have that political leadership as long as we are in Iraq. We have a need. We have a need as military families, a need as citizens of the U.S., a need as working people and union members, a need as citizens of the world and as teachers. We can make a difference. You can make a difference. We can stop this war, bring them home now, and take care of them when they get here. Thank you very much.